sit here.
You're now live.
Now live, okay. And I'm not going to really call this to order because I just wanted to have kind of an informal, formative meeting. Welcome back to those of you that are returning, and welcome in to our new members. New members, I think what I'll do is if you let me know areas where you feel you could use some updating, we'll set up some tutorials. I am not anticipating doing a lot in insurance and all those financial banking. What else have we got? Securities, stocks, bonds that we regulate. So I can have DFR do kind of just an update so you know who they are and what they are. I anticipate that the bulk of our time this year is going to be spent on broadband, just because that and childcare have been seen as needs to recover and to continue, and probably on property taxes. When we left knowing we had a $58 million deficit from last year. We have the November 1st letter that went out based on the data that was available. So I'm going to start next week with some updates on both of those, what's gone on, what's happened. And then I've asked folks for input on anything they're particularly interested in. Give me an update. I don't have a lot of rules in this committee. I come out of local government, and so I start on time because in local government, they start mixing up the tar and feathers if you're 10 minutes late. And I expect folks will be on time. If you can't be here, just let me know so we can make sure we've got a quorum, either me or Faith. And I tend to run things as long as the committee is running in an orderly fashion. I'm not a stickler for, I have to say, you, and you. We're a small enough group, I think, so we can have an orderly discussion. I'm going to try, because I think we figured out that Zoom is stressful. I'm going to try and book in like 15 minutes to a half hour break. We'll meet our regular time. I'm going to plan on every day, but if we don't have anything that we have to do, I'm not going to meet. I don't meet for the sake of meeting. New folks, I've traditionally tried to get folks out by 3:00 on Friday, given that weather and travel. But we also frequently find we need to stay in late as we get to the middle and to the end of the session when all those other bills come over that have to go through us. So just be aware, we may be putting in some extra hours in those weeks. Other than that, I'm gonna just open it up and have folks, what are you expecting? What are you interested in doing this year? I know Senator Pearson, you sent me an email, and I know I've talked to Senator McDonald about some broadband things. I don't know if we've got any specific bills coming. I know rumor has it that there's some broadband bills in process. I think if we get a bill, we may use that as a basis, but I'm looking forward to a lot of committee discussion on both broadband and on property tax and see what we come up with. Senator Brock, and I've got some.
In terms of broadband, there is a broadband bill that I'm working on that revives the Vermont Telecommunications Authority and calls for the creation of what in effect is a broadband czar. And I've been dealing with the commissioner of the Public Service Department and also the administration on structuring that bill and outlining what might be in it. We've had a number of meetings. The second piece of broadband is what's going on in the House Energy and Technology Committee. And there, I've been talking with the chair of that committee because I know that they're structuring a bill, and I should have a draft of it very quickly, in which they're taking, or at least attempting to take the lead on doing broadband, some revisions to broadband that are outside of the VTA and that structure and the 10-year telecommunications plan on their side, and have indicated they obviously want to coordinate closely with us in terms of what we're doing, so that A, we're not covering the same ground, and B, that hopefully we're on the same page as we move forward to make it easier when their bill comes to us and ours presumably goes to them or in some way gets combined. One thing to mention also is this committee now has jurisdiction over information technology, which was new last year. And one of the things I don't know that we've ever done is gotten a real good overview from the administration, from ADS, of what some of the major challenges are and issues relating to information technology generally. We've done that on the Joint IT Oversight Committee, which Senator Pearson is also a member, but it might be useful at some point to have that kind of orientation for this committee as well.
I think you've been invited to talk next week. Just for an update, I know you and Senator Pearson are both on that Joint Oversight Committee, and Senator Kitchell. And next week, I'm hoping we can get some updates on where the $30 million we gave for broadband out of the CRF money went. It got spent, or some of it got spent. I had a call from Commissioner Tierney yesterday. Apparently there were contracts that went out that ended January 1st, because that's when the CRF money ended. But now that's been extended. She's going to send Senator Kitchell and I a note, but I'd feel more comfortable rather than just say, to have it actually be legislation, because there was money that was rescinded from housing that said, well, gee, if we'd known we could have kept going, we could have spent that money if you'd given us another month. So that's going to be, I think, an initial discussion is what's happened, where are we in that process. I think that's what I know. Senator Sirotkin, I saw your hand.
I just a couple. Am I getting bounced back?
I'm hearing you all right.
Okay, well, I'm hearing myself.
No,
twice.
you are echoing.
Yeah, I think you need to hang up your phone, Michael.
I did several times.
I've got you on here twice. I've got you in real life, and then I've got you, maybe, I don't know, Faith, have you got it?
So Senator Hardy, I've got a new iPhone 11, and I don't know how to hang it up. I keep pressing the button, and it won't.
Faith, can you shut him off from Control Central?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I just really, it's amazing.
There you go.
Okay,
Anyhow,
I think you're
I'll work
okay.
through it.
Your
I'll be
name has
brief.
gone away.
We're not meeting on Mondays, right?
No.
Okay. Well, now I'm muted. Now I can't hear you, Ann. Can you hear me?
Am I close? Yeah, I can hear you. You can't hear me at all?
I can't hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go like this. Okay. Well, I'll just talk because I can't hear you. I would like to get some sort of update on the successor to the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission.
That's
Is it-
on.
report. It may not be urgent for COVID, but at some point, I think we need to look at tax restructuring. It may be a multi-year process, and I'd like to hear what they have to report.
Yeah, they,
I don't know
I'm
if
also
you got
putting
that,
in
but
the
I've got a note
project
last
based or
week
mini
from
TIF
them
yeah,
bill
that
again. I don't know which
outline where
committee
they
it
are.
will go to, but I'm
okay,
getting a
Michael
lot of,
can't hear us.
can't hear me?
No, we can hear you. Randy had a note. We
Go on
got,
to somebody else.
no, we got
I
we'll
don't know why I
send you a
can't hear you.
text.
Oh, there.
But we're going to hear from them.
Okay, now I can hear you. So I was just saying, I'm putting in the mini TIF bill that passed out of finance last year. That didn't make it, project-based TIF bill. I don't know where it will start, but I'm still hearing from towns like Westford and other rural communities that would like to use that creative financing to build small projects. So that's all I have to say right now.
Okay, yeah, that was the mini TIFs. All right. The other thing that's come up, it came up in VEBSI, it came up last year, and it came up with my discussions with Commissioner Tierney, are the boards like VEBSI and the Public Service Department that we have kind of given a dual role to. They're supposed to promote broadband and promote economic development and then regulate them. And there is some inherent conflict there. And I think Randy's bill of setting up a separate is an attempt to deal with that. That's come up in the discussions about TIFs and regulation with VEBSI. We did have that with captive insurance, and we took the promotional part out of DFR, put a person in economic development that is charged with going out and recruiting captive insurance companies to come settle in Vermont or organize in Vermont. So that's an underlying issue I think we're going to have to take a look at. And I know that the commissioner does recognize that tension. So we'll see if we can help in that area. But, and the TIFs brought that up because there is the regulation and then promotion kind of conflict going on there. Okay. Anybody else? I've got Senator Hardy and then Senator McDonald.
Thank you. That issue with promotion and regulation is an issue that we heard, that Chris and I heard a lot from the ag department too. So it's pretty rampant across a lot of different areas in our government. But because I'm new to the committee and I know one of the big issues that we'll be facing is broadband, I'm wondering if there's any reading or reports or something you would recommend over the weekend so I can get up to speed more on that issue. I agree that we should hear from that tax commission. I know that they have some property tax recommendations and education tax recommendations. And that's the education tax area. I see Chloe's on this call. That is one of the areas that I actually know the most about, and I'm really interested in working in that, on that, and excited.
Hey, we'll work on it.
For all what you have to say too.
And I understand there is also I don't know if it's the tax study. Someone said there was a education tax study committee, like it was separate, but is looking at a more income-based.
I think that's the same.
Yeah.
The same group. Okay.
I think it is.
This was just the way it was phrased. I wasn't sure if it was a different group that I had missed, but.
And that report came out and it's in the like comment period. Did you guys all get an email asking you or saying that there's 2 weeks where they're accepting comments or whatever? So before they.
That's the email that came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be looking at that. And there isn't much coming to us from tax this year. It was some basic housekeeping. And I'm assuming that bill will start in the House. I've said I'd sponsor the insurance housekeeping, which is, again, there's no sandbox this year. It's pretty basic housekeeping. And, we'll walk through that next week. It's generally filler while we all wait for the governor's budget address, which generally adds a little spice to our life. And we'll find out what he's going to be proposing. And that frequently gives us stuff to work on. Okay. Other than, wait, Senator McDonald, I missed you, right?
No, it's all right. Yeah, Senator Brock brought up the 10-year telecommunications plan. And all of our actions are supposed to be guided by that plan, but we haven't had one for about 3 years. And we're not going to have one at the earliest until next June. Meanwhile, we're dealing with this COVID emergency, and there's a lot of money floating about. And it will probably be, the legislature will probably commit it to being spent. And the law today has our goals of, in 202C, of dealing with broadband issues and how they should roll out. And that's not being followed today because, one, we're in an emergency and we do not have a 10-year plan to follow. So the distribution of this money today, and since COVID, has been set out in many cases contrary to the state's goals and doesn't have a telecom plan to adhere to. And our challenge in the next 6 months is to, or as soon as possible, is to see that what is taking place today and how the money is being spent today doesn't in fact undermine our long-term goals. And the sooner we understand that challenge, the sooner we might be able to bring something to bear upon it, because things are happening now and will continue to happen in the next couple of months unless we assert some guidance. So thank you.
That will be part of that update. I'm going to get a brief update for where joint fiscal has been meeting weekly, sometimes twice a week, to put money out. There hasn't been any new money go out. It's still the money that we authorized. Some did come back, but not very much, which I found was surprising. I think only about 1 million came back. So, but apparently there's still some in play. So next week, we're going to do an overview. I think Steve and Stephanie are, about how much money came in overall, whether we have jurisdiction or not, where that money got spent, what's left. I know that the appropriations people have worked very hard to see if we couldn't reserve some of that money to help with the projected budget deficit this year. And there are ways we could do that and make sure we weren't just spending for the sake of spending. So we'll get that update, and hopefully, and if we don't get it, we'll tell them to come back. A detailed list of what projects got done, what their specifications were. We're trying to get, there was COVID money that went for an emergency broadband plan known as, I think, the Matt Dunn plan somewhere, but his company got the contract. We're trying to get them in to tell us what was in their plan. And so then, we'll at least have a plan to know what we're working on, or we can decide we don't like their plan, but that we will be getting to. Okay, I think I saw Senator Bray and then Senator Brock.
Thank you. So it's great to be coming back to finance. I think ships passing in the night. You came back to chair finance the year I went out.
Okay, I wasn't sure if, I thought maybe you had been on when Senator Ash was chairing, but I wasn't sure.
Right. And so it's great that we're talking about broadband. I served on the Vermont Telecommunications Authority and worked on it before. And actually, so it's finance and GovOps that set up the CUDs, whatever that was, like 4 years ago, which is, it's like that seed has really, taken off. And I'd love to see as part of the broadband work, facilitating the work of those CUDs, because for all the utilities that have had ample time to build out, privately to provide that service and have been unwilling to go there, and the CUDs have sort of stepped up to take that on. And I'd love to find ways, not unfairly in any way, but to really understand what would help them continue to go, because I sense that always there'll be large parts of Vermont where the private folks are not going to be all that attracted to it because of the lack of density. So anyway, I'm delighted to be back in on that side. The other thing too is because natural resources and energy, we end up working on policies and programs, and so much of it is implemented through utilities, and you folks regulate utilities. So to me, they are really, it's like a hand in glove relationship. So I'm glad to be able to, be in the room so that we can do things in a coordinated way. And so much energy policy involves talking about how utilities behave and rate impacts of new programs and all the rest. And I think there's a big opportunity there. I've mentioned to maybe everyone by now over the last several years this freedom and unity bond concept of Vermonter to Vermonter lending, and where there's I think there's a big opportunity that to find not traditional bonds, but to pool money, in essence, Vermonters loaning to other Vermonters, in order to support community-based development. And the three areas where I can see that there's an immediate large need is weatherization, housing, and broadband. And so I don't know if it's a good fit, but I would love to spend some time with you all to think about it aloud and see if there's an opportunity there. I also wanted to just very briefly, so education, all of us are really familiar with every time you're out and about, well, not so true lately, grocery store. But anyway, we always hear about property tax. And it's a bit of a puzzle to me, given, it seems a bit of a misnomer in that for so many people, 70% of Vermonters, they're income sensitized. So it's not really purely a property tax they're paying in order to fund work. But somehow property tax has just got like a bad rap, and I don't know what ideas will get explored, but I'd love to be part of that conversation that helps us sort it out. Again, it's just like, it's a little bit like pushing a rock up the hill, I suppose, addressing property tax. And last but not least, I was thinking about follow-up reports. So I'm a little rusty on this part. I don't know if, every committee usually gets some series of annual reports coming in, or special reports, or programs that are in a pilot phase. But I'm just thinking, I don't know if someone, maybe if Faith can help us with this, to compile a list of sort of what's out there, so that before we go off on new things, that we keep track of. I know this is a challenge for us at Natural Resources. We have programs underway, and we need to pause and look back at what we already asked for or is already happening out there to see how it's doing before we go on to the new stuff. I'm guessing this committee has the same kind of exposure,
I don't think we asked for that many reports. I think other committees put us on other reports. But I know there is a list because GovOps sends it around every year. So that you should be able to access and,
I have the list and I'm happy to send it out.
okay, Faith has it. She'll send it out to us.
Thank you.
And we'll get, as new reports come in, we get them presented to the committee generally. Serving on health and welfare, we don't get anywhere near the reports that health and welfare gets. I'm still happy to have to report the study on death in hospice. I assume everybody died in hospice, but I guess we need a study to report that. So take a look at the agenda. It's just kind of blocked in, but we'll fill it out as we go forward. We'll start kind of with the big picture and then narrow it down. The one rule the chair has is I don't like surprises. So keep me informed of what you're thinking. If you have issues that haven't come up and you're not going to vote the way I haven't had any, I haven't had any indication that you're going to vote no, let me know that. And then I can, we can, if necessary, have further discussions or further information. I think that's about it. Senator Bray.
Yeah, so thanks for reminding me. It's your no surprises thing, which I appreciate as a operating rule sort of across the board in the Senate. It's very helpful. I have made some drafting requests, but none of them are out and finished. So I just wanted to let people know that anything that relates, actually, I'm probably going to let the Senate know in general, because some things for like clean energy and economy, there are many people on different committees that might be interested. On the I have a broadband drafting request that addresses the tax treatment of broadband infrastructure. And so, of course, I'll let people know on this committee.
That'll definitely come to us.
Right. And I just, so my hope is always that any bill that I put in, anyone who wishes they were on it is on that bill, because I know people, regardless of the committee they're on, they may have an interest in something for a decade, but they're no longer in a committee of jurisdiction. So I don't want to leave somebody behind.
One of the things that's harder on Zoom, you're not running around the chamber with a sheaf of paper saying, do you want to sign on?
Right.
And you have jogged my memory. Part of my discussion with Commissioner Tierney yesterday was that she has gotten a grant, I think she said for $1 million from the Northern Borders Organization. And they are using that money to hire someone with financial expertise to help the CUDs put together those financing packages that you just can't guarantee is out there in your community and willing and able to volunteer. So that should be helpful, getting the CUDs moved further along. One of the problems we had is we would have liked to have put a lot of this COVID money into the CUDs, but other than EC Fiber and Central Vermont kind of sort of maybe was in a position to use it, but most of them are just not in any position where they were ready, willing, and able to start signing up customers and stringing, fiber. So hopefully we have one person in there to help them just technically, and now we're going to have a finance person to specialize in that. I don't know if Central Vermont Fiber rented that Batmobile that went around. I kept getting reports back and forth, but we know they couldn't use COVID to do the poll reading. But I thought in one of the exchanges, maybe it was with them and Steve Whitaker that I got CC'd on, that it sounded like they may have used that machine that could read the polls driving by. So we'll ask them to come in and talk to us about if they did, and if that's so, how it went, which might help us inform our future decisions. Senator
and
Bray.
just a little more on broadband. So I have been in conversations with Vermont Electric Co-op and Washington Electric Co-op about possible interest in building out backbone, which then they could lease to other providers. And Christine Hallquist talked about that in an election cycle ago, and I'm not sure what has changed other than there is for a co-op at least, I don't know the eligibility requirements, but RUS money that is very inexpensive, like something on the order of 1% or 1.5% over 35 years, I think it is. So it makes it very affordable to make a large infrastructure investment. And so there may be yet another group coming forward to help on the build out. And it's actually, that's why I was mentioning the tax treatment of infrastructure.
Yeah, that is, I've had a discussion with Washington Electric Co-op, and they're very interested in stringing it out. But they've got the cross fertilization thing with money. And if the way the tax structure is set up makes it prohibitive for them to do it. So I'm glad you've got that bill in. It's on my take a look at bill as we work our way through there.
Right.
But that is we got rid of the thing that said they couldn't apply for federal money at all. And so I think that'll be a good part of our discussion.
Right. It would be lovely to have almost actual competition out there to delivering the build out,
Would be good. Okay. Anything else? Senator Brock.
Just a few things regarding this telecom plan and so on. Now, one of the things I know that we've been talking about a lot is, does the department have an effective strategy for creating a 10-year telecommunications plan and explaining it to us? And they did put out a document to that effect, and they now have an RFP. It's now, the due date is extended to the 8th of January to get proposals back to do a telecom plan. However, they only have $250,000 available to do it. And I think we question whether or not there's sufficient funding. And that's one of the things that perhaps we should talk with Commissioner Tierney about in a little bit more detail when she testifies before us on Tuesday. So that's problem one. The second is, I asked the question of the department back in early December, and I still don't have an answer for it. We provided these proposals using CARES money to extend lines out for people to be able to hook up to broadband. And we've got, these maps and all this detail they provided to us about, this is available here, there, and everywhere at all these underserved addresses. But what I don't understand, and I think we need to understand, is how many people actually got connected. Is there any correlation between what we put out in terms of these proposals and the equipment being delivered or available in the customer's home to actually connect and get broadband? And I've asked this question a number of times, and the answer I get back to the department is, we're looking at it and we're going to get back to you. And the last time they said that was on the 16th of December, and I still don't have it. And I think that's a big issue because taking a wire down in front of a person's house doesn't provide them broadband to be able to educate their kid or do telemedicine. And I think we should spend a little time probing that.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's the only thing that counts. And I know I've read nationally that some of the big providers are doing subsidized programs to help folks. I know they did during the beginning of the pandemic, but where that status is, because it doesn't do anybody any good if the wire's there and nobody's hooked up to it, or the fiber.
And we know that under the most recent federal stimulus, evidently and we need to know what's really in that 5,600 page bill. We've got bits and pieces, and we understand there's some money in it in order to subsidize low-income people. But the danger that I think we need to be very, very alert to is it's the old thing that happens with the federal government all the time, is they give you a bunch of money that's good for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, the state is stuck with this program. It's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And what is that going to cost? And where are we going to get the money to be able to continue these kinds of things?
That's my
Jenner.
understanding is that there isn't a lot of money in this most recent bill for broadband, nowhere's near what
Yep.
any of the states need. And that the hope
Correct.
is that with the new administration, maybe we can see something approaching rural electrification, but that there will be more. So I think we need to learn what happened with the 30 million we put out. And the number is how many people actually got hooked up, how many of those folks are paying their own way, and how many of them are being subsidized, because then we know what we may be on the hook for. And then we can go from there. Senator McDonald.
But Senator Brock has reminded us that we're talking about commissioning someone to write a telecom plan, which we don't have. And we may be getting more money to use, and we're doing it in the absence of a telecom plan. And I would submit that when we talk about stringing things out, the investor-owned utilities do their best to string out any regulation that would interfere with the current practice, the current habit of spending and subsidizing the investor-owned utilities to build stuff out to the beyond the current limits, that it does not require equal access to all providers as called for in our statute of 202C, that allows them to charge no limits on what they charge for their services, and permits them to continue to gobble up the easy, the low-hanging fruit, which puts the CUDs at a disadvantage. And they would, I don't know what our powers are and what our authorities or what the committee would be interested in doing, but in the interim, while we are waiting for a telecom plan to be adopted that has been 3 years overdue, perhaps the committee would be able to, but in statute, say, in the meantime, we will not permit the following X, Y, and Z, because the investor-owned utilities are doing very well under the current circumstance while we labor without guidelines and put the commissioner of the Department of Public Service in the position that Madam Chair, you have characterized perfectly. So she is making recommendations that are contrary to what we do have in statute. And when they're done, we're not going to be able to say, tear all that stuff down and give us the money back and do what we should have done. So I'm going to be impatient about what we do, starting next week, when more federal funds are available and we find ourselves in the same pickle that we have for the last several years. Thank you.
I can't imagine you being impatient. Senator Brock.
I did just to let the committee know that I have asked Maria Royal to do some legal analysis on these very subjects in terms of where is the limit before federal preemption comes in terms of what our authority is to do any form of regulation. Typically rate regulation is beyond the scope of our authority, but the questions are things like, are we okay in adopting, for example, a policy that says we will not use state funds to subsidize expansion of legacy providers unless that expansion or something else provides, in effect, a neutral network so that others can share it. And a number of questions like that that Maria is looking at and researching right now, and also examining what other states are doing in this area.
That's good. Okay, Senator Bray.
Great. Well, I'm delighted to hear. So it's interesting how this conversation's evolved during the years I was away. Like the conversations used to be about the last mile. Now we're down to the last 100 feet. Like if you're not connected, how disconnected are you? And then the other thing underneath the hood here a little bit is I hope we'll get a chance to look at making sure that we have symmetrical service at an adequately high rate, that what gets built is, a good investment because it will be functional for a decade, that kind of thing, or more, or upgradable. Like there's plenty of people out there interested in asymmetrical service so they can sell you movies, but it's not a service that provides for good remote education or telemedicine or even the evolving grid, like a dynamic grid that relies on the internet to move data around. I see progress. The questions, the build out is going and the questions are getting better and better.
We're learning as we go. And, make sure that we ask any questions. There are no dumb questions with this one. It's highly technical, and my hunch is that the department is understaffed. And, we really, whereas the legacy providers are not understaffed. And so we are working, on an uphill. But I think collectively, we know a lot more than we did 2 years ago, 4 years ago. We're learning as we go, and the technology is evolving. So we will see. Okay, anything else anyone wants to talk about? This is our last fun and game session. We're down to work on Tuesday. And take a look at that. We just, this is a rough block for the agenda. If there's somebody you think you'd like to have in, if we can get them in next week, we will. If not, we're on to the next week. And we'll see, where it goes. All right. The sun is out, at least in central Vermont, which is a rarity. I'm getting tired of saying, it's another gray day in paradise when I get up in the morning. So go out. I think it's supposed to be sunny, if cold, all weekend. Go out and enjoy it. Stay healthy. This legislature has done really well with that. And we'll see you all on Tuesday.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very
Faith, I can
Thanks, Ann.
talk to you. We can go off live. Faith, I just was going to check in with you on the agenda and schedule.
Is
See you all
Faith-
later. Have a great
Bye-bye.
week.
Is Faith
Bye.
working out of the
Have a
State
good
House
weekend.
or from home?
No, it's Faith's working from home.
Okay, because I've got those voting sheets and stuff to get to her from last year, so.
I'm ending live stream